Hello, people. This week I have decided to try something a wee bit different. I want to see if I can do an audio recording and if that makes for, less giggage on ye old iPad. Because that's what I do all of these on, is an iPad. And it gets overloaded at points. And I picked this week because it might be a bit on the short side. No fault of anyone, not planned, but this is how it worked out. This week, I decided to read The Spy Who Loved Me by James Bond. No, it's not by James Bond. It's a James Bond. What is it? Ian Fleming? Ooh, I can search stuff on the iPad while I'm recording. A hidden bonus. Yes, it's by Ian Fleming. I mean, it sounds obvious, but if you know the history of James Bond, it gets a little convoluted as to who has the rights to what. But that's a separate story. It's pretty interesting, though. The Spy Who Loved Me. Now, clearly there is, what is it? Unwritten contract, right, that you have with the author before you start this book. You grabbed a James Bond book and you want James Bond. You want spy action thriller, this kind of mess. And our author uses that a bit to his advantage. I say a bit, I say a lot, actually. The book starts from a woman's perspective, a lady's perspective. And the way it begins, and knowing it's a Bond book, you're not exactly sure, right? This lady makes it all the way to the end. So that's always in the back of your head, right? Because it is, I know my main character is James Bond. Anyone else might be fair game. So in that sense, it does help the tension. It's unexpected. Then when you actually get into it, it's very much a coming of age story. It's a young girl. She's Canadian. I think her parents are like ambassadors or something. In any case, she's Canadian living in London, and she's 17. And I believe it's the 60s. So she's out, she's about, she's trying to get, into the popular parties and stuff. And we get sort of a first love, a look at first love, right? Kind of messy. It's I would say it's a bit much for a kid. I would at least pick a teenager and up to read these books or let them read these books, however you want to go. The books are very much not like the movies in that they're more adult. Not that anything gets too gratuitous, I would say, but the tone and the tenor are much more adult than your movies are. So you have to keep that in mind. In any case, she has her first love and she thinks she likes the kid, but of course, once they have sex, he's out of there, right? It's one of these situations. So then she's sort of in a hole. What is it? A bird with a clipped wing, so to speak. She gets more into her job, reporter. She ends up in Germany, and she ends up starting to be attracted to another guy. That's the sort of the second chapter. Again, it's not a long book. Second chapter is this guy. That guy's going to marry somebody else. That marriage falls through. Love affair begins, right? She's older now. I want to say 22, right? So, or 20. Not many years have gone by since the first love. Now we're in love two, and it's a lot of explanations because this is all first person, and it's memoir style. I'm writing this down after the fact. So that one, and it's a German guy, and it's very staccato, and she thinks everything's fine until she ends up pregnant, which the guy didn't plan for, and he doesn't want to marry a Canadian lady, he only wants to marry a German, and then so we get abortion, which I suppose would be more shocking in the '60s than it is now, and now it's sort of, yes, it has its controversies, but it's put in the story in a way that you understand the author knew it would have more of an impact, but that impact lessens over time, if that makes sense. This is the energy that I got out of it. In any case, that relationship goes south, and it's not just like, all right, we're out of a relationship. He straight like fires her as well, which I'm like, bro. To me, that was almost worse. To me, that was almost worse than the abortion because wrongful termination suits are more headline catching than 20-year-old woman gets an abortion, which is, I don't know what that says for society today. It is what it is, right? But I was like, oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Just because we stopped sleeping together doesn't mean you can just fire me now. But he does. He's like, you can here's some severance pay. You can just go. I don't need all that mess. I was like, that's pretty savage. So now she's saying like, I'm gonna go back to Canada. I'm tired of Europe. She's really heartbroken about it. Not that she like super loved the guy, but it was working. And she didn't like how abrupt it might have ended. That sort of energy. And then she goes to Canada, right? Back home, she's going to buy a Vespa, which is a little scooter. And she's going to drive it, I don't know, I guess from Vancouver down into America and see the sights there are to see because that thing gets 80 miles a gallon and you can go all day on it. It'd be kind of fun if I'm being honest. And it's at this point because I'm like, we're getting into the weeds. We're talking to the mom who's telling her she's crazy, that young girls don't do this. Because at 22, she's still a young woman. We're getting, the discussions about how far my money's going to go, how I'm going to plan to sleep at night, how I'm going to plan to eat, how far I have to get each day, etc. And I'm at this point, we're a chunk of the way in the book, and I'm borderline getting aggravated, right? I, as much as it's good writing, and it is good, I didn't sign up for like a YA coming of age story, right? I want my James Bond. I want people shot. I want some spy action. And I'm kind of figuring at this point, James Bond's going to come in at some point, and I kind of figure I know how it's going to be. But then the other half of what I was saying earlier comes into play in that it is a James Bond story, and maybe the damsel in distress doesn't make it. So you start to have this fear, which I think is sort of the genius of this book in particular. She ends up at a hotel. The hotel guy's kind of skeevy, but she says like I can deal with that. She brushes him off. But she's working as a receptionist in this hotel for 2 or 3 weeks as the season's coming to an end. So this hotel in this part of, what is it? A New Yorkish area? I don't, somewhere like this, somewhere out of Jersey. Once you get away from New York and New Jersey, the second half of those states, right? Everyone imagines the city. But the bulk of that state is this wonderful woodland sort of area. And of course, it has the wicked snows. And at that time, I remember I heard one story where they would do this. In the summer, they'd leave the city for like a month and just live out in these woods, in these little, I guess, more than hotels, like bungalow style, long term rent situations. Actual families. This is an actual history now. He would go live out there, and then in the winter, you go back to New York because, you know, it's actually hard to be out there in the winter. And in the winter, the whole camp would, I guess, shut down. You just close all the buildings. You don't make money now. Whoever owns the property only needs it to make money in the summer season. So she caught one of these at the tail end of the summer season. So in about 2 or 3 weeks, everything's going to shut down. And that they're paying her $50, which she could use. So everything's going fine until the very end. The very last couple of days, they're real weird to her. But then they say, can you close up? We have to go such and such place early. And Mr. Townsend, or whatever the guy's owner's name is going to come in a few days. And you'll hand him the keys and he'll give you your $50. And she agrees, even though she thinks it's kind of weird. Because she's essentially a stranger. And they do have a problem with people stealing appliances. But they figure she's just a normal girl. Shouldn't have a crew to break down and steal a refrigerator. And they're going to give it a go. So she's left there. And not 2 days later, sort of during a storm, your ne'er-do-wells come, right? You're not so nice guys. And she could tell sort of right off the bat that they aren't good guys. They have the look about them. What is it, like wolves? I think is the expression they use. But she lets them in because they know the owner's name, right? And she's not exactly sure how the handoff is going to go. They're in, and it doesn't take her but 2 seconds once they're in for her to understand that she's now in a precarious situation. She was casually lounging around, and now that turns into her feeling very overexposed, which I'm going to assume is sort of just small t-shirt and shorts, which again is not a big deal in today's age. But a lady in the 1960s in some house shorts, right? Some lounge around the house shorts and a small shirt is showing way more skin than is normal. And so now she's in a confined area with these two men. And they're not hiding the fact too much that the situation might be bad for her in the worst way, right? And you feel that tension. You feel that tension because at this point you've spent the entire book with this person, with this character. And you don't want bad things to happen to her. And I'm like, well, here's the genius of it. I'm now actually invested in the damsel in distress. They want her to make her. They're like, make us some eggs and toast, and then we'll see what we see. She, of course, ain't going to sit down and take it. She bolts the moment she can. She bolts out the back door. They easily track her down. The guy is a crack shot. One of the guys is a crack shot. At some point, he whips a gun out, tags a can of coffee to from across the room. She didn't see the movement of his hand. Next thing she knows, she's hearing the gun, and then in air he tags it 2 more times, like casually. There's a crack shot, and that's how he gets her back from the woods. He's pinpointing shots around her, saying like, I could get your little toesies next. So she's like, there's no hope. She attacks one with an ice pick, but it's a glancing blow. She doesn't, it's a lot harder to, actually stab someone with an ice pick if you don't know what you're doing. And she doesn't. And so, she knows. Well, I tried twice. I failed utterly. This is not good. It's going to end badly. They start attacking her, and you're like, I don't want this to happen. I genuinely don't. And then ye old doorbell rings. And then almost at this time, you remember you're in a James Bond book, and you're like, I know who this is. They have her answer the door. And it is James Bond. And for a second, she's like, he's like them. She gets that sense from him. But then a half second look, and she's like, no, he's not one of them. And she's giving him signals like, head leans and eye looks. And he's a super spy. Of course, he picked up instantaneously. She probably wouldn't have had to say anything. He could tell just on her nervousness, probably. But she's given, messages. And it's James Bond, so now he's in the room, and it's very much this feel of, alpha wolves looking at each other. There's this tenseness that's going on. There's these play on conversations because the bad guys are trying to keep a lockdown on her, and Bond's trying to casually get her away from them. Very fun. I do like that Bond isn't like a gunslinger. He's not like a shoot first kind of cat. His first inclination is just sort of for both of them to get away and they'll call the cops. Which plays more into the realism and less, I guess, into the movie. Ish, I say. Movie-ish feel being, we got to get to the action because I only have like 2 hours versus the book who has as much time as it needs. There's this great back and forth. We get the background on Bond from Bond. He says, this is him saying through her because we're still in her memoirs. It's him saying that he was on a separate mission. I guess tracing some kind of criminal, tracking some kind of criminal. Got a flat. Just got a random flat and then walked over to this building because he saw a vacancy sign that was accidentally left on. That's it. Just a fluke of that. And now he's with this girl and he's going to save her. The action hits and they set the building on fire. The whole place is now on fire, which Bond then figures out was their plan. Their plan is insurance fraud to burn the building down, blame this girl, probably kill her and leave her there, and just chalk it up to this horrible accident. And collect all the money off of it. The two guys were probably going to, field strip it a little, a sink, a TV, a refrigerator, the things that were valuable. They'd have probably taken that before they burn it, or a few of them, just to make themselves more money. But she probably wasn't going to make it out of there. And she realizes this, and she's very thankful to Bond. We have this sort of fire, burning, gunfight situation. The action's very good. And then through her, we're worried about Bond, but we're not really worried about Bond. He's not going to get got. Then, of course, Bond always gets the girl. And so we have some of that action. Again, not gratuitous, but I also wouldn't recommend it for, young kids. 15, 16, I say would be fine. It I think if you read Harlequins, right? If you read ye old romance and novels, this will seem almost tame to you. If you didn't expect it, it's a bit much. And if you're a normie like me, I don't read as many Harlequins. Uh, what is it? It does seem like a bit much. You wouldn't you wouldn't want to read it in front of grandma if you get what I'm saying, right? But it's not. Again, it's the 1960s. We didn't go too graphic with anything. But she does. She's like She's with Bond. She really likes him. Ladies love Bond. What can you do? And it's about this time when it sort of dawns on me that I'm like, this book is more for, if this is the women's Bond book, if that makes sense. The other ones are more for the boys, more action, more shooting, more I'm really a cool guy, the guy gets the girl. This is sort of a love unlucky girl getting sort of a perfect night of passion, right? This the fantasy moment, and she even starts to realize like it's not going to go further than that. She starts to understand what he is, and that it's not. This isn't husband. This isn't gonna work out this way for me. So she already sets her brain to not take it that far and just sort of enjoy the moment with him. There's a second attack at night, but of course it's James Bond, so he's ready for that. And when she wakes up, he's gone. He's gone, but he's called in all the cavalry, from state patrol to the FBI. It's just the full meal deal, so that he wants her to have as little inhibiting her further road trip as he can. So he's called in every favor he can, or he needs to, because he is a secret agent, and those calls go high up, and high up calls from on high to down low make wheels start to move. There's cops there everywhere. The police chief shows up. The FBI is on his way. They, of course, believe what she says. There's no way a girl is just randomly going to kill two guys and set a place on fire. They brought her food because he knew the place burnt down and she's not going to have any food. The worst, right? He's a absolute gentleman, a British gentleman. But he gone. He has to go on with his mission. And we get this great conversation, this great dialogue from the police chief, where he's talking to her. He's like, "You're kind of like my daughter. You're about the same age. And I would tell you what I tell her is that you got caught up in a moment that's not normal, and to not over obsess about it." He's sort of warning her not to sort of fall in love with Bond. He's not going to pry anymore, as he says, but however that is, you were a girl in distress, and it'd be easy to get infatuated with the hero, but that he and the guys that he killed here, they're a world apart from the rest of us. That they operate in a different realm. They're wolves and we're normal, and that neither of them are real to you. It's just a small window. What does he say? It's a small window into a constant shadow war that's going on, but that it's not for you, the good or the bad. So don't lose sleep over the bad guys that could crawl in your window, and don't lose sleep waiting for the hero that's not the knight in shining armor. He gives her this kind of a speech. I thought it was really great. The concept there at the end, and she sort of starts to accept it and move on, and understand that this officer probably was right, that James Bond is a wolf, and these men are wolves, and they are fighting each other, and that she was just in the middle. And that's sort of how the book ends. It's very much a lady book, I would say, honestly. But it is good. Um, and now, well, it's an audio recording, but we're still going to do our ads. These lovelies are my books. I wrote them myself. You can buy them and help the channel. You can, as of the time of this recording, get Kindle Unlimited and read them along with other books. And in that sense, you won't have, quote, wasted your money if you don't like them, right? I don't know if they're good. I think they are, but, I wrote them and I'm really in the weeds about it. What do they say? You can't see the forest for the trees? It's that kind of thing. I get cross-eyed looking at them. Or you can just follow along, or you can like and subscribe. All of it helps the channel. Uh, Thank you, and I'll talk to you all next week.